This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
This is Everything Elite, the world's best podcast devoted exclusively to All Elite Wrestling and the Elite Extended Universe. I'm Aaron Bentley. I'm joined by my good friend, the South Carolina psychopath. It's Mike. What's up, Mike Spears?
This is something that we probably should give context to immediately because
Probably not.
Okay, then we're not going to go with this. Hey, y'all, it's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. I'm engaging in self-care. I've been watching a lot of British light entertainment shows lately, and I've been feeling that I could be a absolute fucking star if they would just fly me out there, put me on like Countdown or 8 out of 10 Cats, maybe the quiz for everything, and I could just become a legend. Like just imagine the world where I become an international celebrity, and I think that's a world that we should live in. So that's how I've been coping through this week, you know. But how are you holding up, baby?
You know, I'm living. I am donating $27 basically every day to make myself feel good. And I'm basically being fin-domed by Bernie Sanders to bring myself pleasure. So it all kind of makes sense, to be honest. Another guy knows a lot about fin-doming. Nate. What's up, Nate?
Just gonna let that go, I think. Hello. Mike's comment on the light entertainment show made me think of like the Japanese light entertainment shows and all your like panel talk shows and little variety shows they have, which made me think of Japanese media superstar Gact. Which then made me think of course, Final Fantasy VII. Did you guys check out the Kenny Omega interview on Final Fantasy VII posted to the official Final Fantasy VII YouTube page?
I have not, but that's only because I don't know when I'm going to play this game. And even though it's a game I played when I was 12, I'm trying to remain spoiler free.
I read all the tweets that you retweeted and the thread that I'm not sure you retweeted all the tweets. So I looked into it and read the thread of tweets.
Was there a thread? I did like 2 tweets.
I thought you retweeted a thread of other tweets. I don't know. And I also saw where somebody tweeted a screen grab from an article.
I tweeted that. Oh, from an article
that called Kenny Omega Japanese professional wrestler Kenny Omega.
That I didn't see.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Anyway, are you going to pick up the remake here? Newly minted gamer Aaron Bentley.
Is it already available for purchase?
Early April 10 or thereabouts.
There's a demo out now.
I've not purchased it yet. I probably will purchase it, though. Frankly, I bought Resident Evil and I really struggled with it. So I'm probably just not, I don't know. I'm probably not built to play video.
There is a demo. You could try the demo.
And see if I suck at it.
That's newly released. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty easy. It's like, it pretends to be like an action game, but it's really more of like a strategy kind of game, just with like action movement. So
yeah, but it's Resident Evil.
You might be able to handle it. No. I mean, once you learn the lessons of Resident Evil, it becomes easy, but sort of has some hard lessons, I think.
Yeah, basically, it's a lot easier for me to just pull up the racing games I have and just like drive around a track. Like that's easier.
Okay. So yeah, try the demo. It's now in the Elite Extended Universe by way of this Kenny Omega interview, I think. So it's your journalistic responsibility.
That's good. We can do a Patreon episode about Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Or we could do one about Gact, because now Gact is now a member of the Everything Elite Extended Universe.
I watched a lot of Gact when we were in Japan. He was on television like 3 nights in a row. And, not really understanding who Gact was, except that he was in one of these Final Fantasy games for some reason. And also not understanding what he was saying. It was clear that he's very charismatic. I'm like, okay, this guy definitely has comedic timing. He's, very dashing. I kind of get the Gact appeal.
You see, this is why I think I could become a global star. I could be a talent on these panels. I mean,
because you think you have a lot in common with Gact.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely was in a J metal band, and I forgot what kind of metal he was in. I've done that before. I'm charming. I have not had the amount of plastic surgery he's had, however. But I mean, I just like watch these panel shows, and I'm like, I could do this. Like guys, this show might be holding me back from like my worldwide legacy of becoming just an
it's our
entertainment.
fault. It's our fault.
Wow. It's the obligation here.
Wow.
Y'all can tell how well mentally I'm doing this week right now, being that I'm just going completely to batshit mode within 4 minutes.
I was going to say, in fairness, even if we did a Gacked episode, I don't think that would be the first mention of Gacked on Everything Elite or on our Patreon, because I know we talked about Gacked on our Japan review episode.
Yeah, if folks, if this is driving you wild right now, if you can't get enough of this Gacked chat, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/everything.
Gacked was the one who did the thing with like Kiss or whatever on New Year's, right?
No, so that was Yoshiki. That was Yoshiki from X Japan. Who's they kind of have similar vibes, I think.
Yeah, they're both Visual K bands. That was where I was thinking about earlier.
And they both have like, feathery highlighted hair kind of deal going on.
Mm-hmm.
But Gax is a little shorter and more up, while Yoshiki is a little straighter and longer, I think.
Was Gak a member of X Japan? I think Gak
he was a member of Malice Miser. So I just looked this up. I was like, oh, maybe he played bass at X Japan or something.
I thought he was connected one fashion or the other, but I guess it's like just part of the overall Visual K scene. So that makes sense.
I'm thinking right now about the people who tune into this show who are really just AEW fans. Like, that's what they're into. Maybe they don't really watch other wrestling. They're just kind of like into AEW. And they got no fucking clue what's going on right now. I hope they'll stick around, basically.
Hey, we love to broaden people's horizons. I mean, X Japan has sold out Madison Square Garden infinitely more times than AEW has, and even a couple more times than New Japan has. So they're worldwide players here.
It's them and Bruno Sammartino, the two of them, but like two most important acts in Madison Square Garden history.
Okay, well, if you're just dying to hear more about this, or if you just want to, ask us to never talk about Gacked again, follow us on Twitter at EverythingAEW. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Nate is at Epitasis. Mike is at Fuji Heya. You can find the spellings of all those on the Everything AEW account. Subscribe to the podcast, rate and review it. I hear people say this on podcasts, so I'm going to say it. It really helps with the iTunes algorithm if you do those things. I think that's a thing. Maybe people will find this who listen to AEW or who watch AEW and want to know more about Gacked.
Yeah, recommend this podcast to your Gacked-loving friends.
On the show tonight, we are going to play Elite or Delete. We're going to run down Dynamite. We're going to talk ratings. We got some Lance Archer talk. We might even have some Matt Hardy talk by the end of this episode. We're going to start, of course, with the game I believe is still sweeping the nation, Elite or Delete. In fact, we got some shit from Kara, friend of the show, Kara, for this on the basis that Delete brings to mind for her Matt Hardy and the Broken Universe. But I think what's happened is this game has manifested Matt Hardy to AEW. All the big power players from AEW listen to this podcast and they thought, well, shit, if there's a Delete part of our show, we have to stop that by getting the Delete guy.
And on top of that, when we get into Matt Hardy, we can talk about how he's developing the most well-layered and deep character of his entire career coming up here. So, it's all inspiration.
Whoa. I think it's the most layered character in wrestling history.
Well, I take that back and I apologize. Most layered wrestler in history could be coming to AEW. So just get ready for that.
Hey, buddy, you're first. What's your Elite pick of the week?
My Elite pick of the week is going to be the crowd here in Colorado, I think. I think the crowd really did a good job of boosting this show, which could have fallen flat in front of lesser crowds, and was with every segment, was with every act on the show, knew all the characters, followed along. Kind of a trite point at this point that the AEW crowds are good and want the show to succeed and pop for the right things and, follow the logic of the match. When people are acting heelish, they start booing them. These are all well-established points, but, ticket sales started off slow in Colorado, eventually picked up. Maybe announcing matches further in advance would help, but of course, tough to do on a shortened week coming off the pay-per-view. But nonetheless, really felt like a particularly hot episode, despite not having Kenny Omega, despite not having Nick Jackson, despite not having an announced Cody match, despite all these mainstays of your program not being advertised on this card, or many of them even appearing, still felt like a hot and important episode.
Yeah, this crowd stayed up from the first segment with Moxley in the crowd through the last segment with Moxley as well. So I think that this show provided a lot for the fans to sink their teeth into, at least live. I mean, there was crazy brawls. There was a little bit of everything that you see in All Elite Wrestling. And I mean, it's something that's such an important part of the experience, and like how All Elite Wrestling, one of the reasons why I think it's been doing so well is you turn on the show and you see, oh, okay, this crowd is awesome. It looks like everyone's having a good time. Oh, when they come nearby, I want to go have a good time too. And I think that that's something that's like reflective of when you look at how other programming is on TV, like how dead the crowds are, how kind of paint by numbers and broken brained it is. And you're like, that seems like hell. I don't want to participate in that. But I think that having solid crowds has perpetuated having solid crowds, because I think each week now people are going out there and are like, hey, well, they all had a good time. Denver's better than Kansas City. Let's show up and let's see what we can do. So yeah, I think this was a hot crowd, and I think it added something in the show that ended up kind of being like the start of chapter 2 for AEW. And I think that was a really strong point in its benefit.
I think it's interesting what you said, Nate, about that the AEW crowds, which we talked about all along, they pretty much go along with what they're supposed to go along with. And on the Revolution Instant Reaction show that we did on Patreon, and I think last week on the show, we talked a lot about how the crowd is reacting to Adam Page in this whole story versus how they react to the Bucks. And so far, I still think this is a point of contention, but I still think they're getting the reactions that they're trying to get to this point. But it's fascinating to see, like, depending on whether they go harder with Adam Page as a heel, which I'm not sure if they lean into this week or not. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But I'm fascinated to see what happens if the crowd won't go along with it. Or will they just say, like, okay, if you want Adam Page to be a heel, then we'll boo him. That's fine.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I think what's been well done about the company to this point is they probably are not going to risk putting the crowd in that position. That's sort of my thinking. Rather than try to push a controversial or thread a tough needle on that point, just go along with what the crowd's giving them, and you're gonna, I think, get a more consistent and well-behaved crowd, I guess.
All right, Mike, your elite pick for this week?
I'm going to do a little bit of fake out. You think I would talk about my new favorite trio in wrestling, the Death Triangle, Triangular del Muerte. No, I'm talking about the awesome main event match, where I think that I'm someone that I find outright handicap matches pretty boring, because there's only so much you can really do, because you always have the heels with the advantage and the babyface. But my God, like, this might be my favorite handicap match in history, which I know is a low bar, as I just said, but just was great stuff. The way they kind of set it up, and Darby just commanding the ring for a good 20-minute period. Like, I noticed when like the match hit the ring, the bell rang, there was still like 20 minutes left on the show. And that's a point of confidence in Darby Allin, that they knew, hey, we can give you 20 minutes and you're going to basically have 17 minutes of your ass getting kicked, and then like 3 minutes of absolute fire, and didn't burn out the crowd, did not fall flat. And it just was incredible stuff there. I think that they told a really strong story throughout the match. And in a lot of ways, this could be a blood and guts preview, because you see what happens. Like, if you're someone that really has not experienced what a word game style match is, okay, the idea of the 2-on-1 advantage, the wrestling, like the heels have the advantage and they beat the crap out of the baby faces for whatever amount of time. And just great stuff. I thought the finish with the anti-air Judas effect was amazing, and Darby just took it like an absolute champ, because Darby's a crazy person. And it just, like, everything about this match was success. You had like the moments of, okay, now he wiped out both the guys, but he knows that he's going to get bullshit as soon as the inner circle hits the ring, because he could expect that, knowing how they were. And he decides to try to take on all 5 at once. I think it's just like a incredibly well-told story. And it was the thing that in a show that kind of set the stage for the next 3 months, this is going to be a thing that I really remember going forward.
Yeah, and had some memorable spots within the match itself. The spot where Darby was his own hot tag was just like, totally original. Rick Knox sold it like he actually tagged himself in. Just like a great little unique thing that plays on our expectations and our understandings of wrestling and what we have seen 1,000 times and 1,000 other companies. He's just like, no, I'm going to tag myself. Fuck you. He was awesome. I've talked a lot about how Darby's work. He does a really good job of like using his momentum and using his whole size and speed and body to like make his wrestling logical, even when he's small and working against bigger guys. You see that in a lot of his offense. In this match, he like did that, but it was like if he had a little bit of momentum, he'd go and fly into the other guy in the corner and take him off the apron. Really like he sold the idea that he was one scrappy guy, valiantly defending himself against two other guys really well in that sense. And, just like the little things, like when he gets in a submission hold, you've seen it a million times where the guy's near the ropes, goes to reach for the ropes, and it's like, oh, he clearly could have grabbed that rope, 5 minutes ago instead of staying there and milking that hold. Whereas Darby goes for the big reach when he's just out of reach of the rope. So it's like he almost gets it with his fingers, but not quite. And it's just like that makes you that much more sympathetic for him. Casts him in a different light than it casts everybody else in every other submission hold. It's like, oh, he's fighting, but he has to go a little bit further than everybody else has to go, but he's going to still keep doing it. So thought the match was awesome. I'll throw it to you, Aaron, but also I want to ask, did it bother you guys that Darby didn't go help Moxley in the concourse and that he just wrestled the match instead? Or did you just ignore that because it's like, well, we know the match is happening?
It didn't bother me at the time because it's like, well, they have to, Darby knows he's supposed to have this match, and there's not really a cemented Darby Moxley alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, well, and to that end, was it on the screen? Do we know that Darby knew it was happening?
Well, crowd was reacting to it. So
it had to be on the screen, right?
I think there was also one wide shot where we saw the whole ring and the arena. And I think it must have been, it looked like Darby was looking up at something there. So,
well, I think
it didn't bother me, but I did see a lot of reactions like, oh, what the fuck? Darby's just leaving them to get beaten up or whatever.
I can see that. I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about it. Which is bad for podcasting, but I don't have a strong take on that. At some point you have to have this wrestling match. So,
hey, if there's one thing we know, AEW is about competition, and Darby was in there to compete.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I totally understand it as a valid thing that probably bothered people, but it just seemed like, okay, this is what they're gonna do. Didn't chafe me.
Yeah, I saw that he was watching it on the screen, but I got that kind of sense like, yeah, they've tag teamed before, but it's not like there's like an established like unit with the two of them. And Darby also wanting it to have a piece of Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara still. Like, would he be willing to do that versus save the champion, or would he want to get a piece of two guys who pretty much tormented him for the last like 3 months? Like, I think that Darby's totally justified saying there.
All right, my elite pick of the week is a little squishy. I don't know. I talked a lot. Here's my thing. I want to give AEW a lot of credit because they fixed a problem that they had in this promotion, which gives me hope they will fix some of the other problems. But this problem was the absolute dearth of momentum they had in between when Full Gear happened and the beginning of the time between Full Gear and Revolution. It was at times, the show was like a little monotonous. It was a little bit like, well, where are we going here? You had a hard time before you got to really building the big programs. So Mike and I talked on AEW Light this week. Well, what are they going to do to start even getting us to this Blood and Guts show on March 25th? What are they going to do to start thinking about moving toward Double or Nothing? And they didn't really give us anything for either show, but they gave us lots of interesting things. So lots of stuff to think about, lots of stuff to play out over these next several weeks, and the threads of those can build to those shows. So I'm just excited that they did some fun things instead of rematches from the pay-per-view or just kind of dumb stuff that isn't going anywhere.
And they built up stuff from the pay-per-view too. I mean, the opening 8-person tag was built off of the stuff from the buy-in. So I mean, like they were taking that as a little bit of fuel for things. And then you also had stuff where like Pac has had kind of this off and on thing with Best Friends for a while, and we got to see the next step with that with Death Triangle. And even though like there's not definitely a slotting of, okay, this is going to be Moxie's first defense, this is what's going on at the tag team titles, which have been tough with Kenny Omega's possible broken wrist, and then what's going on with Nyla Rose. They did a strong 2-hour block that I'm going to argue that actually I think they put some seats in the ground for, if not Double or Nothing, definitely for Blood and Guts, because they definitely were showing that Inner Circle were dominant and kind of were just taking out all the top line faces. And now you can kind of see over the next 2 weeks, okay, who's going to be on this babyface team for Blood and Guts? Because that does seem like the obvious road, right? Like if it's going to be Inner Circle versus like Moxley's Militia, or is it going to be Inner Circle versus Elite / like Nightmare Family? Like it does seem like that is the obvious endpoint for this like short cycle, and I feel like that they plant some seeds to that.
Okay, I'm going to segue this into my delete because I don't disagree. I thought it was a pretty good, very watchable episode where they set up a lot of things, had a lot of angles. All the angles were well executed. Pretty much everything hit here. So my complaint is that the just overall tenor of the show or how it was structured, it kind of felt like a good WWE post pay-per-view show. And the reason I say that is started with the new champion comes out first thing on the show. That's classic WWE trope. Comes out, does his promo, is confronted by the guy he just beat. They do a talk segment. Very WWE Raw. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay. Then you had basically a lot of the feuds or the programs that were on the pay-per-view were just carried right over to this show. Hager and Dustin, Sammy and Darby, Jericho and Moxley. I mean, basically everyone. Pac and Orange. All those feuds appear to be continuing forward, or at least those relationships are continuing forward in that regard. And really, with the exception of maybe the SCU and Colt Cabana win, really felt like a lot of heat on this card. It was a lot of the heels that were defeated on the pay-per-view are now getting their heat back by attacking the guys that just beat them. Just felt a lot like, we're not getting any resolution from that Revolution show. We're just going to the next step, and it's all going to be heat on the baby faces from the guys they just built. And that just felt, kind of felt, again, it was all well done, but the vibe of it felt very WWE basically, or it felt very, status quo in that regard. That, we had Death Triangle set up. We had some other angles set up. Cody has a new program. So that's, something on his plate that's fresh. But other than that, they added new twists to things, but they did not really stir the pot much, if that makes sense.
You see, I don't have a lot of problem with them not having a clean line delineation, even though I've said both on the instant reaction and on here that this felt like chapter 1 versus chapter 2. It made sense why Pac and now Death Triangle still get into it with Best Friends, because they still had the unresolved things. Maybe you could say that Jericho and Moxley, that should have been a clear line of delineation where they kind of go their own ways, because now it's time for Moxley's run with the title belt. And I understand that, but I feel like for stuff like the Inner Circle versus the Nightmare Family, like that's things that there were times in the past where they could have blown it off there. And it does seem like that this was only like a beat towards it, and where maybe the final blow off is going to be Blood and Guts, because then you have 2 months until Double or Nothing, and that's when you do it. So it isn't necessarily like what the promotion was promising as a breakup, or is it just people's like perception of things kind of continuing, making this like a post-show Raw versus what you were hoping for?
Yeah, I don't know. Those things didn't bother me, I guess, because it makes sense things can't always end cleanly. And not all of these, some of them, but not all of them were like the big blow off of the feud. I agree. Jericho and Moxley, you could have never talked about it again and moved on. But I thought they did a pretty good job of Jericho giving an explanation for why their feud kind of continues. And so I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we'll talk about all of this stuff as we go through the show. But overall, I just felt like enough new stuff happened that it made me want to tune in next week. So from that perspective, it didn't bother me, even though I can see what you're saying, that there is some stuff that's kind of just, all right, we're lingering.
Yeah. And again, it didn't really, again, the show is very enjoyable to watch. Very fun show. The larger issues is it's hard to strike that balance of pro wrestling is an ongoing infinite story where things are going to, keep returning, and, there's never a series finale or a season finale. There's always a next show where you have to keep advancing things and promoting things in the future. That's one thing you have to balance. The other thing you have to balance is, the fans want to believe that things have changed as a result of the big show they just saw, or they want to think that something has been resolved as a result of the big show they just solved. And it just felt more like the former than the latter to me in this show. And, I'm just wondering what is the card for this promotion that's going to be like your WrestleMania, where it's like, here's the big moment, here's things paying off, here's the big celebratory thing that marks the new era. It just feels like this most recent show was not that. And maybe that wasn't their intent, but I'm just pointing out that's a tough balance.
Yeah, that's fair. I think my delete is something that, like, talking about expectations, I think that's a good way to kind of segue to mine. I was so stoked for this Pac versus Chuck Taylor match. This was a match that, for me, these guys have had a lot of collective history over the last 10 years. Of course, Pac being a Dragon Gate guy, but also Chuck Taylor's first big exposure outside Jakara was in Dragon Gate USA. So I was really stoked for this, and it just was not necessarily the kind of match I was hoping for. And I feel like that this was a match that was a little bit underwhelming, especially for someone like Pac, who I'm so high on, and Chuck Taylor, who is, I hate using this phrase, but one of the, like, most sneaky good, like, underrated people in wrestling has always been Chuck Taylor over the last decade. And just like this, for some reason, they didn't necessarily mesh in this match. Kind of disappointed, but I am now kind of happy that they're going to get another opportunity with what's going to happen with Best Friends and Death Triangle. So I can't measure this, but yeah, this match was a match I was looking in going like, all right, this could be a match that I'm going to be talking about at the end of the year for this going to rock so much. And it wasn't that way. So I think, like, that was another thing about being guilty of heightened expectations.
Yeah, I'm like, to me, Chuck Taylor is a Kentucky guy. And so I just love him and I root for him and I'm happy for him. So on one hand, it was just exciting to see him in like a big singles match on national television. But I do think I wanted more out of it. But to be fair, and we go rounds on this sometimes, Mike, I do think Pac can occasionally be pretty plotting in his matches. And I'm not sure that meshes perfectly with, like, I'm not sure 2020 Pac and 2020 Chuck Taylor is really like the perfect singles match
That's fair.
To get both of their talents spotlighted. I really would prefer Chuck Taylor to do the Dustin gimmick from Evolve. I think that would fit better against Pac in 2020. And like 5 people saw those shows, so this joke is really getting over.
Oh, so you're talking about sneaky great deathmatch worker Dustin is what you're wanting here.
He's really good at plunder matches.
No, he's amazing at them. Like, and the great promo by Kenny Johnson saying, hey, maybe you all should listen to Pac. He's a smart guy, and maybe that's a big turn that makes this the Quadrangular de la Muerte.
That's right.
I'll give this match credit that when he did the Awful Waffle, people bought it and bought that Chuck Taylor might beat Pac, which, you would never expect that going into the match. So that got a big reaction. Also, they had that big botch relatively early on, and it was like Chuck went for a Rana and Pac was going for something else, I think, and they had crossed wires. And after that, Chuck was like rolling out of the ring or something, and you could see him like smiling or laughing about it. And that just like summarized Chuck Taylor well to me, because I can imagine in his head, he's like, oh, of course I fucked it up. And he just finds the humor in it. It's like, yeah, no, it figures. But of course I fucked it up. And it's, darkly funny to him or whatever. That was very Chuck to me, and I found that charming.
Nate's not going to like my delete pick because I'm building on something that happened last week instead of starting a news story. And That story is simply that I said last week that the AEW women's division was like pre-Divas Revolution or Women's Revolution WWE. And this was like the fucking classic example of that. They did one women's match on the show. It was about 45 seconds long, and it included Leva Bates. I mean, no concern for the women's division shown here. Just it's sad. It's like a bummer to me because they have a lot of good people. And I believe Riho was in the building. You had Yuka Sakazaki, I believe, in the building. So it's like there's a lot of. I know Hikaru Shida was in the building with a fucking jump rope. That's all she ever gets to do is jump rope at the arenas. So it's just it's a bummer. It's sad and it sucks.
Yeah, and not only was this match a minute, the focus of this entire match was all Britt Baker doing commentary, which she's gotten better at commentary, especially doing heel commentary. Like, I don't think that that's debatable, but this match stunk. It was short. It wasn't even like a good squash. And I'm a Big Swole fan, and it just seems like, is this really how you're going to get Big Swole over to this roster? Is putting her in there with Leva Bates, who's never been that great. Like, I'm being a little delicate there, but she's never been a great wrestler. And you have Big Swole, who's someone that does have high-end topside, high-end like ceiling, and this is like, what are we doing here? Like, you could have done so many other different things for the people available. You could have looking, Hikaru Shida was on Dark for next week, and it's like, oh, you couldn't have just had Shida versus Swole. I saw that live in Charlotte. It was a great match. Like, it's just like, what are we doing here, Aaron Bentley? What are we doing here?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't going to disagree with that, or with AB's point here. I will disagree with Mike's point because having people get decisive wins is a great way to get people over. That's a good thing. But you know what you could also do is do a second match on the show. Would have been easy to fix. I was cheekily tweeting about this from the account earlier because some TNA guy was like, oh, this isn't a fucking problem on TNA. And he's right. It's not. They have women up and down that card, including like in the main events. But somebody was like, oh, well, the alternative here would be to put Leva Bates on national TV. Like, no, that's not the only alternative. They have a lot of women on the roster.
Right.
Leva Bates is fine for an undercard squash match. They got lost in their match for a minute there, but gonna happen. You beat her in 45 seconds. That's fine. You can also have like a big time match with your, higher level women's talent elsewhere on the show, or do promos, or do video packages, or do any of that. They just don't seem interested in doing it right now.
Before I get a tweet, I actually don't know whether Riho and Yuka Sakazaki were in the building. They weren't on Dark, so they probably actually weren't there.
Riho was. She did tweet that she was sitting in the crowd. She saw someone with a Riho t-shirt.
Cool that Riho was there and did literally nothing.
Oh, no, that wasn't Shida. I saw Shida did a selfie of somebody with a shirt.
Shida was doing her jump rope as she does every
No, but she tweeted that she was in the building and had somebody with a shirt on. Anyway,
regardless, we know Shida was there, so there was other stuff to be done. So just a bummer. Anyway, that's Elite or Delete. Ratings quickly, because it's just the same stuff basically every week. AEW up a little bit this time, so that's new. They've gone from 865,000 to 906,000, back up to fifth in the demo with a 0.35. That's at least a 4-week high from the numbers that I have here on the run sheet. NXT up 1,000 viewers to 718,000, dropped to 20th in the demo with a 0.23, which is also what they had last week. AEW, again, either wins or ties every demo. They tied in the 50 plus, but won everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing really worth tracking now is to see if they're ever going to break out of this plateau. I mean, you look at how the ratings have been, and the high water mark for the year was on New Year's Day, and they have sniffed it in a demo portion, but not in total viewers. And it just seems like, I feel like I've said this like the last few weeks, there is a plateau here. What's going to happen for them to break out of this plateau? I mean, they did finish fifth and higher than NBA games. So the true battle of AEW versus NBA, AEW took the win this week, but really that's all there is to talk about.
Yeah, I will say, Meltzer said that interest in the pay-per-view was up based on, his data to this point or whatever. We don't have buys on that yet. But I would think the post-pay-per-view show being up suggests there was a lot of interest in the pay-per-view. There was a lot of interest in the pay-per-view, results and aftermath. So probably a good indicator there.
Before we get into the rundown of this week's Dynamite, I just want to remind you to check out patreon.com/everythingelite. We've got a lot of new subscribers this month, so I hope that you will join them. On Sunday, we dropped the Revolution Instant Reaction Show, so you can hear all our takes that we recorded late on Sunday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning about Revolution. Also, of course, Mike and I did AEW Light, our Dynamite preview show. And on Friday, Mike is going to drop the Terrace House Party Primer.
Yeah. After weeks of us trying to figure out, we still don't truly have a format for it. I just kind of sat down, and as the self-appointed historian and obsessive of Terrace House, I kind of just put together a half-hour show talking about what Terrace House is, what goes on it, how to watch it. And I know that there are a lot of EE heads who are big on Terrace House and loved us talking about it. And that's something that hopefully is going to continue on further on Patreon this month. So check it out.
I just got to Pepe. Seems like a real charmer.
Yes. The absolute boy.
Just the conversation skills are next level in his second language. Being so charitable and charming to Ruka, even as Ruka is exposing himself as just a huge dumbass. Really remarkable stuff.
Pepe is the absolute boy.
Pepe has one of the nicest moments in the whole show. So
that's good. I'm glad.
Yes. You love Pepe. It's he showed up. I hated him because he's a very good looking guy.
Right. He's like, oh yeah, no, I'm a successful mangaka who does my own manga, and got that coming up. Oh, I just model on the side. It's fine.
Right. And it's getting to live in Japan, even though he's not Japanese. He's just all the girls love him as soon as he shows up on the show. I'm like, this motherfucker. But he wins. He won me over. I guess he didn't need to win Nate over. Nate was in from the beginning.
No, I mean, the commentators, they were all won over, and I was like, yeah, no, they're right. You just see how generous he's being to Ruka in this moment, and goddamn.
Yeah, he rules. So we got to figure out what's the best way for us to break down this show. I think
it's hard with the binge format for this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. This is obviously an AEW adjacent Patreon, so I'm not sure that we need an episode by episode breakdown of a television show that involves no one from AEW.
Yeah. We don't need me going on an hour talking about Pepe's mentorship of Ruka before Hana Kimura shows up. We don't need that.
We should probably just do the 12 episode blocks. We should probably do 1 or 2 episodes per block.
Yeah, I think so.
That's probably the way to go. So let us know when you get done with the first block, Nate, and we will then we'll start from there.
Well, I think I am, right?
Pepe was in the second block, yeah.
He starts in part 2 for sure.
Okay, so it's 12 episodes per block, right? All right. Well, let's all get together then, and we'll do 1 or 2 episodes on the first block. I think that's the way to go. I'm sure people have not fast forwarded at this point. So next week, at least Nate and I think Mike's going to join us. We're going to do a No People Gate review. The Stardom show on Saturday night. That is in Korakuen Hall, but we'll have no fans. Stardom just announced today they're canceling all the rest of their March shows. So we're going to do a review of that. So that'll be up on the Patreon next week. And of course, Mike and I'll do AEW Light. Patreon.com.
One of these times you'll remember that I am on the Light show every week.
That always fucks me up because Mike and I sit here and we do the show. I don't actually interact with you.
I sit in the same spot that I'm in and do the show also.
It's just over a period of time, AB. Right. I always make sure to include Nate.
You're constraining your thinking by time when really that's irrelevant.
You're right.
Time is fake.
That's true. Okay. I'm sorry, Nate. I see you. Your part of AEW Light is valid, and I appreciate it.
I forgive you.
Thank you. That means a lot. All right, that's patreon.com/everythingelite. We got 3 tiers, $3, $5, $8. Join up. We had a new $8 subscriber today. So join up before we run out of $8 subscriber slots. We'll never do that. Week 22 of AEW Dynamite. It started, of course, with a video recap from Revolution. There's a lot of video recaps of the pay-per-view on this, which is cool. I wish they would just go back and do the old... I guess WWE does this too, so it sucks. But just the still portraits or the still photos from the pay-per-view, that's just very nostalgic for me, and I love it.
Especially the ones that are in black and white because they have blood.
Yes.
I think that there's no going back there, putting the toothpaste back in that tube after the network, and that's when people start showing clips. But yeah, these music videos are actually always pretty strong stuff. So like I always enjoy it. This one felt super long though, starting off the show, but makes sense.
Yeah, I noted at one point that Moxley had not started talking yet, and it was 8:04. So at least 4 minutes had passed before his first promo started. So Justin Roberts is the first voice that we hear in the arena. He announces the new AEW champion, Jon Moxley. We see Moxley coming out through the crowd. Everybody's, patting him on the back, which, by the way, just because a wrestler gets close to you does not mean you have a license to touch them. Stop touching wrestlers. That's my opinion. Thank you. All right. Mox comes out. There's a lot of talking on this episode, so I'm going to try not to tell you every word of all the promos and sum them up a little. But Mox basically says, he's got the belt. He says it's beautiful because AEW represents pro wrestling, the sport I love. The belt didn't belong to Jericho, doesn't even belong to me. It belongs to the fans who helped will this company into existence, and we brought pro wrestling back. And he talks about how he's happy to defend the belt against anybody. And he says, which I'm sure got Nate excited, he knows it's not over between him and the Inner Circle. He knows they're coming after him, so he's got a message for them. I dare you. Jericho's music hits. Jericho, he just lets this fucking thing play. He wants to hear the fans sing along, and he is not going to interrupt them.
Yeah, I do. It's going to reach a point where I'm like, okay, let's move on with it.
Right. Well, Jericho's pretty good at realizing when things are supposed to end, so maybe at some point he'll be like, all right, shut the fuck up.
That's right. Our friend Oatgan did point out he really did not hammer the bubbly bit into the ground whatsoever. Really hit it, exploited it, and then backed away from it. On that note, the most recent episode of Talk is Jericho, where he talks about what he believes is the conspiracy to steal the AEW title and revisits all that, is a must listen. He makes a pretty good case that the limo driver was involved in some way to, remove the AEW title belt from his possession. But even accepting that he makes a good case on that, you still get fun, weird, conspiratorial wrestler thinking elsewhere on the episode. So it's a real treat.
Jericho says he doesn't need a belt to be Le Champion. And he says, basically it's Mox's MO to challenge us to come out here. He has to note, of course, that Mox's shtick has paid off because the Moxley era has begun. He asks the crowd if they like it, and he responds, well, I don't. I think it sucks ass. Just a great Jericho line. And then this is where he starts kind of trying to sow the seeds of a further Jericho-Moxley feud, because he says that Moxley won the championship based on a lie. He's a cheater. Jericho trained for 3 months to face a man with one eye. And, of course, Moxley had 2 good eyes in the match, and he showed us that halfway through the match.
Fantastic line. Just great stuff from Jericho here. I mean, this whole opening segment, even with Moxley's rally the troops promo, was great.
Jericho should have been watching New Japan World. If you're going to be in the promotion, watch the product, bro.
That's right. And he says Moxley has turned the Inner Circle from a good-natured group of guys into a hit squad. They're going to tear the entire roster apart and start with Moxley. And he says, Jon Moxley, this is the setup for the whole show, basically. He says Jon Moxley will not leave Dynamite on his own 2 feet. If he does, Chris Jericho will take a 60-day leave of absence from All Elite Wrestling. But Jericho says he's got a plan. Moxley is not as smart as he thinks he is, to which Moxley responds, I never said I was a genius. I didn't even graduate high school.
Real South Ohio hours here. Real South Ohio hours. I appreciate it immensely.
And Mox says this time he's going to do just what he did Saturday. He's going to send Jericho's ass packing this time for 60 days and make him look like a stupid son of a bitch. I love that Moxley is considered one of the best promo guys, and probably is one of the best promo guys right now. But sometimes he just says shit instead of trying to make it a thing that's a memorable line in a promo. He just kind of the way he built this up was oh, he's about to say something that's going to catch on as a phrase, But instead he just says, I'm going to make you look like a stupid son of a bitch. We went into wrestling after this. SCU and the Dynamite debuting Colt Cabana defeated the Dark Order team of Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, John Silver, Alex Reynolds, and ultimately Colt Cabana pinned Alex Reynolds in his first match with the Superman pin.
This was a really fun opener. I like this a whole lot. I thought that Colt in this role is a great position for him. He now tangentially is a member of Strong Hearts because, of course, SEU are Strong Hearts adjacent. Shima has filled in for Chris Daniels at times. So, yeah, that means that Colt Cabana is a member of Strong Hearts. Like, my logic here is sound. I'll not take any arguments contrary to this. But this match was just like a really fun opener. I always like seeing more of the Beaver Boys. So it was great seeing them there. And I like the idea. The Superman pen from Colt Cabana is just such a ridiculous thing that when it works, I'm just happy. I'm like, well, you got one over on him. Like, that's a dumb pen that they fell for. So take that, sucker, you lost.
Yeah, I do wonder, what the long-term benefit is of giving Colt Cabana a bunch of wins, but I don't wonder what the long-term benefit is of getting the Superman pin over, because it's super fun and I want people to buy on the pinfalls, in the same manner that people, buy in on Toru Yano wrap-up or roll-ups. Like, I would like the Superman pin for it to be on that level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect that Colt's going to get like a main event push or anything in AEW, so he can work the lower end of the card, and largely I think is going to end up being a commentary guy, maybe doing some other stuff with the promotion. So I don't know. I will say he got like no reaction coming out, even in this really good crowd.
But he got a chant by the end of the match. So
that's true.
There you go.
That's true.
He's a good worker. I know people don't want to believe it, but he's like a very veteran, practiced worker. He knows all the tricks, folks, and got this crowd behind him, regardless of how well they might have known him in the first place.
After the match, Evil Uno gets on the mic. Is it just they may be from similar places, and that's why? But he really, every time he talks, I think it's Kevin Steen. Just, I don't know, similar voices. Maybe I just said something racist. He said the Exalted One is furious, and heads will roll. But folks, we still did not find out who the Exalted One is. They're now starting to push this story on commentary that maybe the Exalted One doesn't exist.
Yeah, there was a delete chant, so crowd seemed to think or even expect Matt Hardy on this show. Of course, the Young Bucks turned up on the most recent Matt Hardy vlog, so he's almost, certainly inbound here. But, now a lot of speculation that maybe he's going to be positioned as the guy opposing the Dark Order in the Exalted One. Who knows?
We got a video recap of the Young Bucks versus Hangman Page and Kenny Omega match with quotes from match reviews, but God damn it, not a single quote from our instant reaction show.
Yeah, need Kenny Johnson to edit these so they include your podcast voice clip in the video package here. I will say, I thought this was funny. So this was something that Meltzer had shouted out, like, when you have a really great match or segment or whatever, it would be smart for AEW to like start their own myth making and, start establishing the lore of their promotion. So I thought they did a really good job here where they're like, hey, this was like a big important thing. This is going to be something that we're going to refer to in our own history going forward. And they did a great job of that. So very funny to take Meltzer's idea for that and then just put Meltzer right in here and be like, Dave really liked it. So fucking listen up.
And of course, like, I like how like they had Wade, Brian, and Dave by themselves, but for Justin Barrasso, they had to make sure to put him down as Sports Illustrated. I mean, come on there.
Fuck Justin Barrasso. But second, we gotta, I guess, a match like this, when it's like, oh, this was an excellent match, we all agree on it. If we're gonna review it on the Patreon, maybe we should go ahead and clip our match review and just post that shit on Twitter. So
that's an idea. Just add them directly. Be like, hey, here you go.
That's right.
Full quote.
Plug this right into.
Notice us. Notice us.
Notice us, senpai. And we'll get somebody to transcribe it. So, they don't have to do any work. Just plug it right in. We'll have that ready for Double or Nothing. Britt Baker comes out for commentary. She's brought Tony a drink from Starbucks. This is their ongoing storyline here. And I think it was spelled Tony, but they didn't zoom in on the cup.
So they did Toney and Toni. Tony. That's the joke, right? Tony.
Yes, I think that.
I'm trying to think of the third, the spelling they haven't done yet.
Tone with the apostrophe.
With an accent.
Yeah.
Accent grave or something.
Yeah, because they're such big fans of New Jack Swing. So that's obviously what they're going to be doing here.
So are we, judging by our podcast theme song. So
I love New Jack Swing. I don't have to put up my bona fide.
I don't want to hear any more complaints about our podcast theme song because it's by the fucking originator of New Jack Swing, Teddy Riley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pass on that. So Teddy Riley, is this the same as like the Blackstreet guy?
Yeah. He did the remix. That's our theme song.
Really? Oh, it's good. Actually, our theme is good now.
It's always been good. You should have taken it on my word in the first place.
I didn't realize Teddy Riley was involved.
Yeah. No, I'm sure I told you.
Probably. Next up was a match on the level of Young Bucks versus Omega and Page, I would say. Big Swole defeated Leva Bates with the Dirty Dancing. I got to say, though, this is the first time the Dirty Dancing move has looked really good, I thought. Okay, nobody agrees or disagrees. So Cody MJF video package recap, and that brings out Cody for a promo. He says losing to MJF is personal, but it's also professional because you make more money if you win. So he'll be okay with it if MJF comes out right now and tells me he won fair and square.
Was there like a directive backstage on this night? Like this was the lead out surprise was not made about like winners' purses becoming the hot phrase because JR said it twice. Excalibur brought it up. He brought it up here. We know that pro wrestling is pro wrestling. We know that they're fighting for a title belt and that's kind of thing there. We don't need you to kind of say like, oh, wait, everyone's contract is performance based. And if you don't win, you're not getting like, you're only getting your show. You're getting your show money. You're not getting your win money. Like that just felt like it was just hacky, I guess, maybe, or just like behind the times that like, I don't think anyone cares about the idea of winner's purse in 2020.
Well, they're making that appeal directly to Aaron, but I regret to inform you both that it's actually good to do that. And really, there's no separation between the idea of winning leads to immediate monetary benefits and this fake title belt that you're all working toward. Of course, because wins and losses matter and they lead to your positioning and your overness with the crowd and whether they'll get a reaction when you get wins leading forward to your possible future as a champion. So if you're going to pretend it's real, then pretend it's real. And they're pretending it's real. I thought the commentary on the show was actually very good. Even JR like had, recaptured some of his Southern charm or whatever on this show. Like they were plugging tickets and he's like, well, tickets are getting shy in Newark, but we'd love to see you in Rochester. Just like a down home, folksy kind of way to tell people to go buy tickets, which I enjoyed. Tony is in this role of, the guy transported out of time where he gets to see the new wrestling and just be like, stunned by it and amazed by it. And he also plays that role really well in that he actually just roots for the baby faces a lot of the time. And that just like, cues the crowd in like, hey, here's the guy who's fucking enjoying the show and here's who he wants to win. And he does it in like such a joyous way that it's really good. And also during one of the ad breaks, like JR just did like an extended endorsement of Orange Cassidy, basically saying he's good as hell. And if you think otherwise, and you're a dumbass, and just very refreshing. And you like to hear that from JR. And you kind of, I think a lot of his crotchiness or his perceived crotchiness has faded away.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody follows me on Twitter, at least, I'm over the winner's purse thing. But I don't need to rehash Mike's arguments with which I agree. The only JR thing that I'm getting tired of, other than that, but the other thing I'm getting tired of with JR is, which he's done this whole time, go for the pin, don't play to the crowd, even to the baby faces. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. That has nothing to do with the story of the match.
He's done that forever. Yeah, it's,
It wouldn't annoy me so much, except Tony started agreeing with him on this. And it's like, no, you have to be the voice of reason.
Well, I think maybe they're doing that to cover for the babyface. Like, oh, he might have pinned him, except that he made this little error and played to the crowd instead of doing this. Maybe that's their thinking. Like, oh, it gives the babyface a little bit of an out for not putting this guy away yet. But
maybe it's just
whatever.
It's annoying to me. It's like, no, wrestling in 2020, like part of it is like doing shit that the crowd thinks is fun. I mean, that's just like, that's how Chuck Taylor is over because sometimes he stops and flexes to the crowd and people think that's funny. So it's good. That's all. Okay. Surprised we talked that much about the first part of the Cody promo because this is when it really picked up. And I'm shocked that this part did not make the elite section of the show because Jake the Snake Roberts comes out. He says he hates to spoil Cody's party, but he's tired of listening to him cry and bitch. He says, you're going to let that little son of a bitch make you cry? He talks about how MJF whipped Cody like a dog. He cursed a lot here. I'm not sure if he went over on the cursing allowance for the show. He says he's not here to praise Cody. He's here to slay him. Yes, Queen. He says he has a client. The dark side is coming to AEW. I would have left maybe this part out because too much, as Tony Khan would say, spooky corporations.
So, new interpretation on that. I think he also called Cody the Rebel Alliance or something to that effect. He's making a distinct metaphor here, saying, Cody, the embodiment of AEW, is the Rebel Alliance. The dark side, therefore, would be the Empire, which gives credence to the idea that he's going to manage somebody from WWE.
Now that's clever. If I'll go with you, that's clever, especially since Jake is obviously most closely aligned with WWE.
Yeah, and the other thing about this is there was a lot of allegory to the murder of Julius Caesar that happened on the Ides of March, and someone's contract or non-compete should be up on the Ides of March, and that would make sense for them to be making their debut on the 18th. So there's a lot of like interplay here that Jake does, and of course Jake, like, giving a promo like this just ruled. So, but yeah, like this owned, and I think everything about it was great, and I think that it was a point I made on Twitter of like, they're obviously going to be doing Cody versus Monster of the Ark kind of feuds until they kind of figure out, like, is he really going to be the person that stays away from the title the whole existence of his career or the promotion, or are they going to eventually like find a way to work it back to him? And if this is what they're going to be doing, like, this is a way to start this off and kick it off with a bang. So I'm for it.
Jake went on. This was somewhat of a long promo from Jake. He says it's been 20 years for him, 20 years to get clean, to get right. The crowd erupted for Jake's newfound sobriety. He says, and if you think for 1 minute I'm going to be a nice boy, you got another thing coming. And then I love this part of the promo. He talks about how for years he said, I put a snake in a bag just to make people think about it. And once you think about it, I'm snaking your ass. Great stuff from Jake. He says he's going to be outside the ring when his client faces Cody. Cody can bring that one-trick pony, Arn Anderson. But what a snake wants, a snake takes. And he's not here in AEW to take the whole pie, just your share. Fucking ruled. But then he ended this promo. This kind of is what I'm getting at with the Mox promo. He doesn't really nail the landing. Jake knows how to nail the landing. He says, a wise man once told me, never turn your back on someone you respect or you're afraid of. And then he immediately turns around with his back to Cody, throws the mic over his shoulder. Fucking excellent.
Great finish. I will say, I'll be like the semi-dissenting. A lot of good content in this promo. He needed to let a little bit of it breathe a little more because he hit you with a lot very quickly. And it's like, let it breathe a little more, maybe. He did a speech of like his Hall of Fame induction that was just like unbelievably charismatic. Crowd was hanging on every word, and he milked it for every last second and really just like owned the entire room. And he didn't have that presence here. It felt like he was out there. He hit his lines and he left. And it needed a little more room to breathe or something.
I think that's fair. I think it was Jake's first chance of like probably cutting a promo that he had written on his own on TV in who knows how long, literally maybe the 90s is the last time he got a chance to do that. So I think he was probably a little excited, but a lot of these lines really hit. And it reminded me, and I was talking about this with someone and I said, I hate to sound like Jim Cornette, but it just reminded me that the people that we talk about being the really good promos today, they're still not on this guy's level. They're still not Jake Roberts. They're not even Arn Anderson for my money. So it's just, it's amazing to get to see this guy. They've done some bad things with legends and bringing them in. I was very critical of the Diamond Dallas Page arc. This is a great way to use Jake Roberts. He's got that buy-in from the crowd. He can immediately give the rub to whoever he's about to bring in. And also he can talk for them and do it successfully.
Well, it's symptomatic of this whole generation of talent coming up in an era where they didn't have to cut promos and talk people into buildings and do any of that stuff. And all the promos that they saw on television were, written by the same 12 guys in a writer's room and using the same verbiage over and over again. And, when people grow up on that diet of promos, they're not going to learn how to promo like the old school guys, I guess. So again, you kind of have to give people a pass because of how WWE has ruined wrestling for like multiple generations.
Yeah. And this is actually another benefit of having Jake as a manager or second, or however they're going to term it, is, as you said, like how badly like they've broken the promo thing. the person he's probably going to be attached to is someone that never cut promos in WWE. And I think that that's going to be a great call having him with that person. So I think that this is just a brilliant idea. It's completely kind of turned my expectation for the next 3 weeks on its head. And I'm excited to see the big debut and how this is going to play out.
I can't wait to see this story play out now. I'm like, Jake Roberts talked me into it.
That's very funny because you were extremely concerned about what they were going to do with Cody after this feud and after he has no, world title belt to chase.
Yeah, and I'm still concerned about that. Like, I'm not sure that Cody can maintain this level of buy-in from the fans without a world title to chase or an overarching villain to go after. Like if there was this MJF thing that kept kind of hanging over top and he was still trying to get there, but now like we've already had that and he fucking lost. So
well, I think that's probably going to be the longer term idea.
Right.
MJF went right back to promoing on Cody in his segment on this show. But they're going to, Mike was correct. He called Cody Sisyphus. We're just going to see Cody continuing to have these obstacles thrown in front of him. And, despite, we were being a little dramatic about it, but despite the tattoo, despite the loss, no diminishment of his reaction on this show, whatever. He came out, got the biggest reaction on the show. People were hanging on his every word, still seemed like he was the ace of this company, despite all those, maybe momentary things that were working against him.
Then we got the Pac Orange Cassidy video recap, and that fed right into Pac defeating Chuck Taylor with the Brutalizer, which I think we discussed at length. After the match, Trent comes in, gets in Pac's face, and Orange Cassidy pushes Trent out of the way, gets in Pac's face himself, and then the Lucha Brothers come out. They attack the Best Friends and Orange, and we get Pac on the mic announcing that he's formed a new group, the Death Triangle. He says it in Spanish, or they say it in Spanish. I'm not going to try. He says, no one is safe, and they lay out Orange Cassidy. So a lot of units forming in AEW.
Hell yeah. And that's the best kind of wrestling, is the wrestling that has a whole bunch of units and teams playing off each other. So, we've seen this with like Dragon Gate and New Japan. This gets people to have their guys and Stardom took it from, I think it was Kagetsu, who was the person who said, like, let's have units and let's do it that way.
They actually originated units.
Yeah. When Stardom existed, like back in the 80s with Isha and Gundam. Yeah, right. Totally.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, no, this rules, and I'm stoked to see how this goes. And I think that this is like the best use of all 6 guys, especially with how the Lucha Bros, their whole thing with like them and AAA, like it makes sense for them to have like a unit where they can just come out here, and they've already booked them in their first trios match, and I'm stoked for it.
Extremely cool unit. The Lucha Bros really love calling things De La Muerte, which is funny. And yeah, you've got 3 guys here who are like established badasses, have crowd buy-in, are dangerous and semi-protected, but have not super found a role or been super well featured where they feel like, they're anchoring a division or anything like that. So you would think that this unit helps them, all of them, find a little bit of a place. And, they did on the cruise made a reference to, hey, maybe we do a trios tournament on next year's cruise or something like that, determine a champion. That could be a great sort of way to build them up and have them establish a niche when they're not being used in bigger programs elsewhere on the card.
Then we saw Sean Spears backstage with Tully Blanchard, and he says he's still looking for a tag partner, which was a story, I don't know, many, many months ago. And he says they will be taking submissions via the hashtag search for Spears.
Yeah, I guess you could, he did have tag matches after that. So I guess those could be continuations of that searching for story. We just want to thank Mr. Spears for unblocking us on Twitter. Tell Joey to unblock us also.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Jake Hager in his second AEW match and his second match in 1 week defeated QT Marshall with some sort of choking move.
It's a head and arm choke.
Okay, well, I wrote that. Was this also a head and arm choke? I wrote in the notes, but nobody. Nobody wrote yes next to it.
I mean, I bailed you out once. I thought you would pick up on that's a head and arm choke.
No, I'm very dumb.
Okay,
Very
I mean,
dumb.
so am I, so it makes sense.
Brain very bad.
Yeah, this match was there. Like, I love whenever I get QT out there doing unlikely high flying, I'm for it. But there's so much Jake Hager I could take on my TV and wrestling in this. We already passed our weekly allotment with Revolution, and this match went way over that.
After the match, Dustin is out. He's attacking Jake Hager. Santana and Ortiz come in, and we get Cody out to make the big save. So there's a lot of different parts in the show where we're building like, ooh, could these be the teams for the War Games match? So that's kind of fun. Ortiz hits Cody with a chair. Matt Jackson alone comes out to make the save. He super kicks Santana and Ortiz. He faces off with Hager, who gets the better of Matt, of course. And then we see Paige kind of stumbling down the ramp. He's got a drink in his hand. His Chiron says, whooped both their asses. Good little callback and funny. He sits his drink on the ring post, attacks and takes out Santana and Ortiz. Hager kind of gets the upper hand on Paige, but then Paige ends up outside of the ring, does the buckshot lariat, grabs his drink. Matt kind of makes this gesture to Adam Page, like that maybe they're going to squash their beef. And instead, Adam Page sticks a big middle finger right in Matt Jackson's face and goes out to the crowd to collect beers.
Yeah, buddy, Paige, don't you know that there is this epidemic going around here? And, that's a very quick way of having the epidemic spread to the roster, buddy. But, like, hey, good on you for getting 6 free beers.
Yeah, when you take that many, I guess I bailed him out from drinking them because he's like, oh, my bet will be that I'll carry a bunch of them, and then I don't have to actually drink any of them. This week here on television, we saw Matt Jackson trying to squash the beef. Hangman was like, fuck no. Listen to the BTE quick hits from Light. Matt Jackson, even before the match, was like, hey, Kenny, man, tell Hangman, no matter what happens, we're always going to be the elite. We're always going to be bigger than this, and we're always going to be boys or whatever. So, again, he's acting in a friendly, reconciliatory way. He just wants to be friends with his friend, and his friend keeps, flicking him off and spitting on him and kicking his head off and shit. So, crowd loves it, but I'm just telling you what's happening in the text here.
Well, it's easy when you're the loser to want to make up.
Again, this is before the match occurred. He's saying, hey, man, no matter how crazy it gets, we're always going to be part of the elite.
That's because he knew they were going to lose. I mean, he knew it going in. It was coward shit.
Coward shit.
But you agree that the crowd erupted when he flipped off Matt Jackson, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I can't hear. My hearing is gone, and I only hear.
Well, you told me they were booing, or that they were. Fuck, I can't remember now. But you said something on Revolution.
Whatever I said was right. Yeah, you're right. I agree.
But this was what inspired me to think, like, wait, if they try to go more heel with Adam Page, is the crowd going to accept it? And if they reject it, how will AEW react? That's interesting to me. It's like a subtext.
It's a big question mark hanging.
It is. We see MJF. He's backstage with Wardlow. He's got a huge Band-Aid on his forehead. It's very big. He says he pins shoulders to mats and bangs rats. A lot of banging references from MJF on AEW Dynamite. Well, I'll get to this. He says he went from protege to prodigy, but AEW fans need a head author they can count on. He says ultimately he's going to be the best AEW world champion in history. You schmucks heard me. So did John Moxley. Talks about how he's going to work to become the number one contender. So this works with what we were talking about of like, where are we going from here? Who's going to be a Moxley challenger? MJF setting himself up. He takes off his blazer to show a shirt that says, I pinned Cody, in the style of I broke Wahoo's neck. He says, this shirt is obnoxious and distracting, kind of like a neck tattoo, as he walks off.
Probably his best promo in a while. I thought
this sucked shit.
Really? Oh, why'd you hate it? Let's get into this.
The lines were cheesy as fuck.
Okay. I didn't think that.
It had none. Like, when he's really doing his heel shtick, it has a little charm to it. This came off as like absolute boring, rote, just the same old shit that like a heel would have said in fucking 1982. I got no interest in it.
But this is like completely different than what he did all the time through the Cody angle, where he was doing crowd baiting and then basically saying the same 5 lines over and over. Like he's putting forth like his aspirations. He did it like a straight down the barrel promo. It was very like wrestle Twitter with the ring light going on there. And I thought that like he did a really strong promo. Of course, me being me, he made an Odyssey comment. So like I'm into it, being the classical studies guy I am. You got to make some comments about Greek mythology. And I thought that
a lot of Mike putting over his cultural awareness on this show.
I'm a well-read person, Eric. Just because I like reading books does not mean I'm putting myself over. I like to push myself. I like to read a book every once in a while. So
what a fucking nerd.
Oh no, I entirely. But yeah, no, this was good. And I think that the one thing that I didn't like, I actually thought the I Pin Cody t-shirt was really kind of hack, but I like the closing line of being the only person bringing up the tattoo. So
I thought the shirt was good.
Oh, you see, this is where we flip flop. I think the shirt was hack.
Thing. The hackiness just works in favor of his heelishness. He's like a guy who his personality was derived from heel promos. He's like a guy who was incubated watching WWF heel promos of the 70s and 80s, and that just actually formed the person that he is. So even when he's hacky, or even when he hits the exact notes that you knew he would, like the neck tattoo, it just feels so authentic that it still furthers his character and furthers your understanding of who he is. So it can't be bad.
No, the neck tattoo stuff is good. The shirt stuff is good. The problem was there were some canned lines in here that were just really poorly conceived. I mean, protege to prodigy is fine, but it's not good. But I wish I'd written it down. There was one other line in this that just made me want to fucking die. And I'm going to have to go back and watch it and do a whole Patreon episode just on that line because I hated it so much. But the other stuff, it's whatever. I mean, MJF is not for me. It's like it's not a character that I'm interested in, but I understand the appeal and I get where you're coming from. But this felt like a promo that a WWE writer wrote. Okay, moving on. Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara defeated Darby Allin, and I put in parentheses, and Jon Moxley, since he was supposed to be in the match. But before he could make it there, 3 masked guys came out to attack him on the steps, and we saw that it was Hager and Santana and Ortiz, and they were beating him up in the concourse. Ultimately, Sammy pinned Darby after Jericho countered Darby's suicide dive with the Judas effect.
Best Judas effect ever. Just the anti-air Judas effects owns. And like, this is just a great match. I thought they played this off well. We didn't talk too much about like the masks for the attack on Inner Circle, but I thought like this for like a 25-minute block of television, they did a really effective job.
Yeah, the masks were good just because Jericho's established that as his little gimmick over the last few years, even going back to WWE. At one point, he put on like a Sin Cara mask and attacked somebody from the crowd. Did it to Evil, did it to Naito. Has, I'm sure, done it to other people in New Japan that aren't coming to mind at the moment. But just funny to see that be like, oh, hey, here's a trick, guys. You can imagine, in your head canon, the Inner Circle conversation that leads to them doing the exact same thing. And it's just fun to see, in wrestling, like a protege pick something up for a mentor. That's just like one of those fun little callbacks and tie-ins that, rewards you for watching.
Well, Santana and Ortiz also did the Rick and Morty mask, didn't they?
No, that was the Best Friends did those. Santana and Ortiz did the Dead President's mask.
Dead President, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
I don't know. They did the masks too because they attacked the Rock and Roll Express after having the masks on, the Rick and Morty masks in West Virginia.
Oh, maybe I am right.
Maybe.
Because they gave out to all the crowd.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually helping make your point here, Nate, that they have picked it up from their mentor.
I was just thinking of the actual match was the Best Friends cosplaying as Rick and Morty.
Right, yeah.
But I believe you are correct.
After the match, while the Inner Circle is celebrating, Jon Moxley comes down the ramp with a chair, clears the ring. Jake Hager attacks him from behind. Santana and Ortiz throw Moxley up the ramp. And we see the Inner Circle beating Moxley down at the top of the ramp. Ultimately, they give him the triple power bomb from the stage through a couple of tables. And then they get together and everybody puts together their hands and flips off Jon Moxley. I have another question to ask, but your reaction to this angle.
Good angle. They, cute little reference with the Shield power bomb and middle finger little party there. Um, you know, well, I guess we're going to talk about this next. So I'll save that. But yeah, I thought it was a good angle. Came off well. They juked us on Chris Jericho leaving because, it was like, oh, he's got a tour coming up. People are going to think that he's leaving. So we'll do a little story here, and they swerved us on it. But, worked in a successful way, I thought.
Yeah. Jericho's tour starts in April. So it makes sense that they were going to kind of like juke him out and then have something happen later on. I thought that this was worked really well. And I had something that I was going to propose to y'all about this because it's clear, at least to me, unless they decide to go Dark Order and the True Exalted One on one side of the cage, which I doubt. Do you see something like over the next few weeks where they're going to like have like Moxley really badly wanting to get his hands on the entire Inner Circle, him and like Darby and like that? And then you also have like the Elite and Nightmare Family. Could they like do something with this over the next few weeks where they try to like fight for the right to get the Inner Circle, be the ones that get their hands on the Inner Circle in this kind of match? Because I think that would be really kind of interesting. And that was the thing that kind of popped in my head when I watched this and when I saw this, because this is the same stuff the Inner Circle did to the Bucks. I thought it was a really strong close. And I thought that it was funny that they did the assisted power bomb like straight up out of the Shield and then flipped them off. I thought that was kind of like a touch. I know that there were some people that thought it was lame. I thought it was great. I thought that this made sense here, and like you're not supposed to like them. Like they should be annoying, and now all the baby faces should have a reason now to want to be in the cage against them and work.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It seems like we've had multiple faction feuds here at the Inner Circle at the center of them. So, yeah, it's a question is who's going to get that cage match. I hope they don't do like 2 cage matches. That would be dumb. But yeah, I don't have a lot of enthusiasm for the War Games concept, but a big faction stable warfare story would be cool. You hope it has some sort of consequences or payoff.
But they should do it in a way where one of the factions in like this faction war represents like white people, and one is like black people, and one is like Latinx people. I mean, that's a new idea for like a faction war.
Are you calling back to the WWF of the mid 90s?
Yeah. I'm saying they should do Nation of Domination versus, what was the Nazi stable called?
Yeah, the biker one. It had all the bikers in it.
The Disciples of Apocalypse.
That's right.
I hate that I remember this. Like this was like right as the time I was getting through wrestling. This shit was on because it was Nation Domination versus the Cycles of Apocalypse versus Los Boricuas.
Los Boricuas.
Yeah.
Right. I'm basically the kid in the GIF of like the white kid putting his fist up for the Nation of Domination.
Yeah.
I know. That's who I supported in the stable wars. So I don't know. That's basically it. I mean, that's the show.
Yeah. So here's our next point is your other topic here is Lance Archer debut, and he did not appear on this show. Mm-hmm. I thought he was going to come up at the end here, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be Moxley, runs off the Inner Circle with a chair or gets a moment of respite from fending them off with a chair. Lance Archer comes out, choke slams him through the ring. You got an easy thing there. Oh, Moxley, you took my IWGP US title. Now I'm going to take your AEW title. You've immediately got a big feud with a fresh guy to, maybe just do a quick month build to that or something. But no, was not on the show whatsoever.
Yeah, like that was the thing because this week was when they're supposed to address it. They were saying like, oh yeah, the Murder Hawk's coming his way to AEW, and they had the graphic and they dropped it. And I mean, I know a friend of the show, Raul, found the video clip because I spent some time last night looking for when they like mentioned it, because I remember the AEW Twitter did, and they like pulled down like that graphic that was the end of the video clip from their Twitter account, even though they still have like the Lance Archer is all elite thing. So that was kind of interesting.
The video clip from the show did not explicitly say he would be on the show. I believe the tweet said he would be in Colorado.
Right.
But that tweet was at some point deleted. So not, again, managing expectations in this promotion. This is, maybe the first thing where they've advertised something, not delivered it, other than like, an injury or something that made them change plans through no fault of their own. But yeah, a lot of people, I imagine there's a big core of people out there that were like, I thought Matt Hardy was going to be on this show. I thought Lance Archer was going to be on this show. Neither happened, so I hated it. Like, we're not that reactionary to it, I guess, but I don't doubt that there are some people out there that are thinking that way.
And I could understand the Lance Archer point, but the Matt Hardy point, I think, is like prime reactionary because, to our knowledge, he's still in negotiations with both WWE and AEW, even though like WWE did like the post where it was like, oh no, we thank him for his creative contributions, thing like that doesn't mean shit. So, but yeah, no, like the Lance Archer thing, like I wonder what is up. And as we're recording, we've been kind of looking to see if the Observers get posted to see if there's going to be any kind of information on this. But yeah, this is like one of the bigger bait and switches, I guess one could argue, that they've had.
Well, shit, not only did they not deliver on Lance Archer, they didn't deliver on Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin and Jon Moxley.
Yeah. I can, and again, a lot of heat on this show, a lot of heels getting the better of the baby faces. I can imagine people in this audience that went home and went, oh, that was a downer. We didn't get this. We didn't get this. And, Colt Cabana got one win. And other than that, it was kind of a bummer of a show.
Yeah, I think it's to their credit that they bait and switched on the main event, and still the crowd was really hot for the whole match. Mm-hmm. And it's also to Darby Allin's credit, and of course Jericho and Guevara. But the promotion has built up a level of goodwill that the fans are willing to go along with it. But from my perspective, I guess I don't understand. So the Meltzer reporting was basically they want to spread out the debuts. It's like, okay, but then you should have debuted somebody last night, because then you could spread out the other ones. Otherwise, that means Lance Archer isn't showing up for many more weeks.
Yeah, I think that was his speculation more than his explicit reasoning for it. On the Observer Radio, he did just say that, this was a actual thing where they changed their mind and changed their plans, later in the process. Then I guess you would have to get your social media correct. But yeah, it's kind of a larger question where, again, Matt Hardy was not advertised for this show, but the Bucks were on his vlog. There was an understanding that he was done with WWE, and you kind of have to take fans as they come if you want to win them over to your side, right? So even if it's not entirely reasonable to expect him to be on this show, that doesn't mean that the expectation doesn't exist among, some group of fans. And that's kind of a, if you're in a enterprise like this where you have to make fans or you have to get votes at every opportunity, you kind of have to take some people as they come, even if it's not reasonable, even if it's totally logical. We've talked about the undecided voter and how they're totally illogical and have no basis in reality for the way they make their decisions. But if you want that vote, you kind of have to deal with it. So I'm just drawing a extended, strained metaphor here to our most recent bout of electioneering, I guess.
Which also goes in with dealing with the expectations game, I think.
Yeah.
Could have made that same tie. Okay, I think that's the show from Denver, the Dynamite show. It's not the end of Everything Elite, folks. We still got some stuff to talk about. Here's what they filmed for Dark. Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy took on Peter Avalon and Kip Sabian. Jimmy Havoc wrestled Severino Corrente. I don't know who that is. Hikaru Shida took on someone I really don't know who they are. I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'm going to go with Abaddon, as if it's a Mexican or Spanish name. Does anybody know?
So I know Abaddon.
Abaddon.
The Hebrew term Abaddon and its Greek equivalent Apollon. Mike, help me out. Apollonian.
Apollinus.
Apollyon.
Oh, Apollyon. Anyway, Apollyon. Yeah.
Apollyon. A place of destruction and an angel of the abyss in the Bible.
Right.
So you see that in your your Warhammers or your Baldur's Gates or whatever from time to time, your Abaddons.
Yeah.
This does have one fewer D than that.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to say. Like I was more familiar from like Warhammer Baldur's Gate Abaddon, but yeah.
Well, I looked her up and I found her Twitter.
Okay.
And it just says, I am whatever, Abaddon, Living Dead Girl.
Apollyon. Sorry, Apollyon. It's got to be Apollyon.
Apollyon, yeah.
Apollyon, yeah.
Living Dead Girl. RMP Dead. I am the dog. Hound of hell, you cry. Devil on your back. I can never die.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Good gimmick.
What about the good Italian boy Severino Corriente? I mean, anything on him?
Local guy was the understanding that I got.
Okay.
But I'm not familiar with him.
I didn't know if they maybe got Akira Francesco after Japan shut down. They did a nice swoop and pick up him. I thought that could have been his.
Did you say RMP on the Abaddon?
Yeah, that's Rocky Mountain Pro.
Yeah, Severino Corriente, also a lot of YouTubes here from Rocky Mountain Pro. So
okay, so that's probably they just got some local folks. So didn't we talk about that on the Patreon Q&A? We talked about they should just use some folks from the local promotion, although they didn't do a thing like putting over the promotion or anything, or maybe they did off camera and we don't know about it. The main event, Private Party took on Sonny Kiss and Brandon Cutler. So we'll be talking about all that on AEW Light on Wednesday. And Nate will also be on AEW Light on Wednesday, talking about all the vlogs.
Oh, yeah.
And next week, March 11, they'll be in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the only match we have announced is Death Triangle taking on Private Party and the Bad Boy, Joey Janela.
Great match.
Yes. Private Party's been like nowhere to be found for some time.
They were in a 6-man pretty recently on Dynamite, right?
Let me look at my notes.
Like 2 weeks ago.
I think it was like about 2 weeks ago they were on. It's been a while.
It all runs together for me, folks.
It kind of does. Yeah, they were in the tag team battle royal in Atlanta.
Okay.
They were in a main event 6-man like relatively recently.
Huh. Well, there you go.
With Darby, Private Party and Darby.
Oh, that sounds vaguely familiar.
Against
I believe it.
LAX and
Jericho.
Sammy Guevara.
Yeah,
maybe Jericho.
It was in Cleveland. It was Jericho, Santana Ortiz with Darby Allin and Private Party.
Mike pulling up the literal notebook, the physical notebook to check the facts.
It has AEW on it. It exists.
Check the facts.
Face the facts. Come on.
I know. I was changing it. I was riffing off of Face the Facts. Mike, this is really going to go well on your panels on the light British entertainment. They go along with the riffs.
They like repartee. They like people being combative towards each other. So yes, I'm gonna be fantastic about those. I have to be able to argue with Jimmy Carr. You're just the Kentucky and Jimmy Carr, so I'm ready.
We need to get Jack Whitehall to give you like a mentorship, and that can be a Patreon feature. Jack Whitehall teaches you to be British talk show panel charming.
I think I could do it. I think that AEW Championship Committee member Jack Whitehall could help a brother out, and we get this going. Yeah,
I'd listen to that.
I would definitely listen to that. That sounds excellent, actually.
And then I'll do one with Gact.
Yes. Well, who am I going to do one with? What do I need to learn?
Yamachan.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
You can do that for the the TJPW reviews. Will be you and Yamachan since that's DDT adjacent.
That's good. I mean, we're similar. We both are into wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. Both like wrestling. We both root for people that we don't like to fail.
Right. I mean, that's the crux of your relationship with them, I feel like.
Yeah. And we've never fucked. So
and yeah, you are both married.
Both married, but never fucked.
There you go.
Me and Yamachan, a lot in common.
Get a YouTube channel together, you and him.
Oh, we could do some great YouTube content.
This is a money idea here.
All right. Well, I think we throughout the show hit the other things that we had down at the bottom of our run sheet that our $8 Inner Circle subscribers already saw hours before we recorded this show and literal fucking days sometimes before the show comes out. So exciting for them. So I think that's it. You guys got anything else you want to bring up before we go?
Yes, the Observer just came out, and
I mean those buys.
Yeah, I'm just looked up Lance Archer. It looks like that according to the Wrestling Observer, it's either going to be Archer or Brody Lee as Jake Roberts' protege. They said that Archer was scheduled to debut on the March 4th show in Denver, but wasn't there. Nothing was said. So I think if they just came up with the idea of using Roberts, it would make sense to introduce Roberts first and build intrigue. All we know is that Archer is coming soon, and there was a change in plans during the week regarding his introductions. Lee was expected to debut on 318 in Rochester, and that was the big thing there. If you talk about Yamachan for one more second, and I'll look up pay-per-view buys, unless Nate's doing it right now.
No, I'm not. What else about Yamachan?
Well, I've kind of hit on.
There was a period where I was a little tired of his misanthropy.
Really?
Briefly. I discussed it on the Patreon, I think. Fuck, how do you say that word? Misanthropy. Misanthropy. Okay.
Yeah, because it would be misanthropic, right?
But I've come back around on it. He's become, a little more likable, I think. The other guy, the tax cheats, the real funny guy, though, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I like Yamachan because everybody else is, well, I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait for us all to talk about some of these episodes because the panel really just blows my mind at times. I think it's mostly a cultural thing of like things that they really don't respond to that I'm like, seriously, you guys are that worked up about this thing? So I'm interested to hear that. And I can't.
There's a lot of times where they'll talk about somebody being not seeming entirely sincere or whatever, and you'd be like, well, I can't detect that at all because it's not. I don't speak this language, obviously. So those minor little subtle, things that are communicating that they're insincere or two-faced or whatever, news to me. I would have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. So found the stuff quick.
I have one more point there.
Oh no. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The other thing I can never guess that they're going to do is like think something is super horny. Like sometimes they'll be like, so there's this part, I think it's on Boys and Girls in the City, where somebody like touched a guy touched a girl's leg and they were like, that's fucking. They fucked just now.
Oh God, I think that was I think it involved Armin, I want to say.
I can't remember, but it was like they fucked. Everybody on the panel was like, dicks out. That's what that was. But then there'll be times where, one time people shared a drink and they were like, holy shit, you drank after the other person?
That's a big thing in Japanese culture, I think.
Yeah, no. I mean, then of course there's a character that Nate hasn't gotten to who's the most extra person who did said drinking.
I don't want to go there yet.
Yeah.
But then something will happen, and I can't say what happened because it's in the future and Nate hasn't seen it yet. And I'll think, oh man, I can't wait to hear them talk about how dirty that was, how horny those people got. And they'll be like, what a sweet interaction. I'm like, what the fuck? I can't, I'm not like synced up with the cultural mores.
Yeah, the cultural mores is something that it sometimes will be just be like a curveball for you. But so here's what Dave Meltzer says about this. They don't have the cable numbers yet, but for iPay-per-view through BR Live, it was up more than 10% from Full Gear and at the same level as Double or Nothing, in the range of 37,000, which is an excellent number for iPay-per-views. The fight number were the highest for any AEW show to date, which would mean it would be among the highest of that platform for any event in history. So that this is a chance that this could be one of the highest ones. The UK market no longer had television pay-per-view, so fight was the only way to get it legally. The number of UK total buyers will be down, but that was unavoidable with the closing of ITV box office and being unable to get a new pay-per-view platform. Indications based on data is that it's would have been second behind Double or Nothing of the 4 shows based on BR Live and fight numbers, but the cable numbers aren't in. Germany TV numbers aren't as big, but are new, and you lose some of the UK. But it's not a lock that it'll be number 2. So probably not as high as All Out, but it will beat Full Gear. So I think we're talking about 80 to 90,000, I guess, is what that's my assumption from that paragraph.
I also, just scrolling through here, I also see that AEW, the Dynamite won television show of the year. Double or Nothing won major wrestling show of the year. And perhaps my favorite AEW thing mentioned in we should say the Observer newsletter came out with the annual awards. This episode or this issue has the annual awards. And for most disgusting promotional tactic, number 7, WWE counter-programming AEW Fight for the Fallen charity show. Number 1, of course, was WWE continuing to do business in Saudi Arabia. So
sounds about right. If you want much more timely awards, patreon.com/everything elite to vote in the AEW EE Pod Awards. That'll
That's
be
right.
next year. So you got to stay subscribed for a long time.
That's right. So you can only vote if you're subscribed every month of the year, actually.
Ooh, that's a new twist.
Those are the rules. So
be too hard to track. Too lazy to track that.
Yeah, not ever going to find out. Tag match.
Don't spoil me on everything. I was going to sit down and read it with my dinner here.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to see what he rated it. But okay.
Oh. That's fine. You can find that. Just start typing in asterisks until you get to. It's got to be 6, right?
6 stars.
Control F. Yeah.
6 stars for the tag match.
That's actually. I thought he was going to go like 6.25.
3 stars for Hager versus Dustin Rhodes.
Let's get out of here, Dave.
3 3/4 for Darby and Sammy. 2 stars for the women's match. Of course, that was definitely worse than Jake Hager versus Dustin Rhodes.
But we are missing the most important news out of this issue. The women's wrestling MVP finishing 10th, Momo Watanabe with 24. Right. Honorable mention, Arisa Hoshiki, 15. So you got the one where it counts, AB.
Yes! Yes!
Fuck.
This is... I would like to accept this award on behalf of Momo Watanabe.
You are wearing her sweatshirt.
I'm wearing a Momo Watanabe sweatshirt right now. I want to say how proud we are of the voters for being able to realize that Momo is better.
Thank you all for listening, everyone.
Yeah, great episode.
Match of the year was Will versus Shingo. The highest AEW finisher was Cody versus Dustin at Double or Nothing. Bucks versus Lucha Brothers, and the Escalera de la Muerte match, and All Out finished 7th for match of the year.
All right, well, I guess that's pretty much it. We were trying to stop, and then Dave dropped us with some pay-per-view buy info right at the end.
I knew this would happen. I had a sneaking suspicion. So there we go.
That's okay.
Who was the overall MVP of the year? Did you already cover that? I was too busy reading something else.
No, I moved on.
Yeah, Chris Jericho won the Fez Flair Award with by about 600 points over Kazuchika Okada. Cody finished 4th with 865. John Moxley was in 8th at 217.
There you go.
Great. Now they got to get Jericho on the show to talk about it, and he can put himself over. It'd be great listening.
Absolutely. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for the show.
I think we meandered enough here at the end.
Yeah. I think I'm getting some echo. Or I was for a second. Anyway, Everything Elite is the name of our show. Subscribe to the podcast, rate and review, all that good stuff. And, most importantly, go check out patreon.com/Everything Elite and give us a shot. That's it. So for Mike, for Nate, I'm Aaron. We'll see you next week.